Alright, Karina baby, the 7th of July is Dudley's night out. Dudley sat on the garden wall feeling miserable. Laura, the little girl he belonged to, had gone to bed and forgotten to bring him in. The evening shadows grew longer until the sun slipped down over the rooftops and it was dark. The house where Dudley lived was at the end of a street. In the daytime it was filled with people busy shopping. Now the street was empty and strangely quiet. As the moon shone down, Dudley looked at the front door of the house. He hoped it would open and Laura would come running out and rescue him. But the door stayed firmly shut, and one by one the lights of the houses went out. Dudley was alone and afraid. He listened as a clock in town struck midnight. 12 slow chimes, then footsteps. Someone was walking slowly and steadily along the street, stopping now and then. It was a policeman on patrol, checking that all the shops were safely locked for the night. When the policeman got to Dudley's house, he stopped. "You're out late," he said, giving Dudley a pat on the head. Dudley cheered up a bit after that. It was comforting to know that someone was around. Dudley gazed at the stars and tried to count them. He had counted up to 20 when a bell rang out shrilly from somewhere down the street. It was a fire alarm. A few minutes later, a fire engine came racing along. Ole's black smoke pouring out of an office window. Suddenly, the quiet street was full of firefighters putting out the fire. Dudley could see everything. It was very exciting. But 3 o'clock, the fire was out, and the fire engines went away. In the silence that followed, Dudley was beginning to feel lonely again, when crash! A trash can and all the rubbish clattered on the ground. A cat had been scavenging for food and had found some tasty bones to eat. Dudley hoped the cat would stay and talk to him, but she was in a hurry. "I'm off," said the cat, jumping over the wall. After that, Dudley didn't have a moment to himself, and down the birds woke up and started singing. At 6 o'clock, factory workers came walking down the street on their way to work. At 7 o'clock, the mailman delivered letters to Laura's house. "You're up early," the mailman told Dudley cheerfully. Then 8 o'clock, the best thing happened. The front door opened and Laura came running into the yard. She took Dudley off the wall and hugged him tight. "Oh, Dudley," she whispered, "I forgot all about you. You must have been so lonely." Dudley smiled to himself. "I would have been," he thought, "but there was so much going on last night." Alright, let's see what's in the book for today. Alright, actually Mama's going to leave it at that. No, let's do the 3 aunts. Okay, so the next one is the 3 aunts. It's all words. I don't think there's not even one photo in for this. Oh, no, there is. Alright. Alright, so 3 aunts. Once upon a time, there was a poor man who lived in a hut far away in the wood and got his livings by shooting. He had an only daughter, and she was both fair and pretty. As the mother had died when she was a child, and now she was half grown, the daughter said that she would go into the world and learn to earn her bread. "Well, my daughter," said the father, "true enough. You have learned nothing here but how to pluck birds and roast them. But still, you may as well try to earn your bread." Now, she hasn't learned nothing. She has learned a lot of things. If you know how to pluck the birds and roast them, she knows more than people do today in a lot of cases. So the lass went off to seek a place, and when she had gotten the little while, she came to the king's house. There she stayed and got a place and the queen thought so much of her that the other maids got envious of her. So they made up their minds to tell the queen how the lassie she said she was good to spin a pound of flax to 24 hours, and the queen was a great housewife and thought much of all kinds of work of hard work, of handiwork. So the queen was a good housewife, and she thought good of all kinds of handiwork. "Well, what you have said you shall also do," said the queen, "but you may have a little longer time if you choose." Now the poor lassie dared not say she had never spun in all of her life, but she only begged for a room to herself. That she got, and the wool and the flax were brought up to her. There she sat crying and ill at ease, and was at her wit's end. She pulled on the wheel this way and that, and twirled and turned it about, but she made a poor hand of it, for she had never even seen a spinning wheel in her life. But all at once, as she sat there, in came an old woman to her. "What ails you, child?" she said. "Ah," said the lassie, "I'm no good to tell you. You'll never be able to help me." "Don't be so sure about that," said the old woman. "Maybe I know how to help you after all." Well, thought the lassie to herself, I might as well tell her. And she told her how her fellow servants had given out that she was good to spin a pound of flax in 24 hours. And here I am, poor me, shut up to spin it all a heap in the day and a night, when I have never even seen a spinning wheel in all my born days. "Well, child, all the same," said the old woman, "if you call me aunt on your wedding day, I'll spin this flax for you. And so you may just go away and lie down to sleep." Yes, the lassie was willing enough, and off she went to lie down and sleep. The next morning when she awoke, there lay a flax spun on the table, and that so clean and fine no one had ever seen such. She should have stayed up and learned how to do it. I don't know why she went to sleep. The next morning when she awoke, there lay the flax spun on the table, and that so clean and fine no one had ever seen such, even as pretty a yarn. The queen was so happy over the nice yarn she had got that she was even fonder of the young lassie than before. But the older maids were still more envious, and hit on telling the queen how the lassie had said she was good at weaving the yarn that she had spun in 24 hours. Again the queen said, well, what she had said she should also do. But if she couldn't quite finish in 24 hours, she wouldn't be too hard upon her. She might have a little longer time. This time, too, the lassie dared not say no. She begged for a room to herself, and then she would try. There she sat again, sobbing and crying, and not knowing which way to turn, when another old woman came in and asked, "What ails you, child?" At first the lassie wouldn't say, but at last she told her why she was sad. "Well, well," said the old woman, "never mind you. If you call me aunt on your wedding day, I'll weave this yarn for you, and you may just go to bed and lie down to sleep." See, she's not learning anything, though. She should have stayed up and she should have learned how to do this stuff, so this way she knows how to do it for the next time. Yes, the lassie was willing enough, so she went and lay down to sleep. When she awoke, there lay a piece of linen on the table, woven so neat and close, no woof could be better. So the lassie took the piece and brought it to the queen, who was very happy to get such a beautiful linen, and became even fonder of the young lassie than ever before. But as far as the others, they grew still more bitter against her. See, there's that word, bitter. Don't get bitter. Stay sweet. All the days of your life. Never get bitter towards yourself or others. I don't care what happens to you in this life. It could always be worse. People have it worse. You know, make sure that you keep your health, though. Don't get bitter over health. If you get certain diseases, they don't go away. So just be careful with yourself and be careful with your body. Please be careful with yourself and be careful with your body. I know how hard it is sometimes. But just eat good foods, even though it's tempting to eat junk food all the time. Don't eat junk food all the time. Just eat good food, be good to yourself, drink water, sleep. Okay, but as the others, they grew more bitter against her, and thought of nothing but how to find out something to tell about her. At last they told the queen the lassie had said that she was good to make up the piece of linen into shirts in 24 hours. Well, all happened as before. The lassie dared not to say she couldn't sew, so she went and shut up again in the room by herself, and there she sat in tears and grief. But then came another old woman who said she would sew the shirt for her if she would call her aunt on her wedding day. The lassie was only too glad to do this, and then she did as the old woman told her, and went and lay down to sleep. Next morning when she woke, she found the piece of linen made up into a shirt that lay on the table, as such a beautiful work no one had ever set eyes on. And more than that, the shirts were all marked and ready to wear. When the queen saw this work, she was so happy at the way in which it was sewn that she clapped her hands and said, "Such sewing I had never had, nor had ever seen in all my born days." And after that she was so fond of the lassie as her own child. And she said to her, "If you'd like to have the prince for your husband, you shall have him, for you will never need to hire workwomen. You can sew and spin and weave all yourself." So as the lassie was pretty and the prince liked her well, the wedding soon came on. But no sooner had the prince sat down with the bride to the bride's feast than in came the ugly old hag with a long nose. I'm sure it was 3 ells long. So up got the birds and made a curtsy and said, "Good day, my aunt." And then the aunt of the bride, "And that is an aunt of my bride," said the prince. "Yes, she was." "Well then, she'd better sit down with us to the feast," said the prince. But to tell you the truth, both he and the rest thought she was as a loathsome woman to have next you. But just then in came another ugly old hag. She had a seat of broom and so fat that she was just able to squeeze through the door. Up jumped the bride in the terrace and greeted her with, "Good day, my aunt." And the prince asked again if that were the aunt of his bride. They both said yes. So the prince said if they were so, she had to sit down with them to the feast. But they had scant taken their seats before another ugly old hag came in with eyes as large as saucers, and so red and blurs betwixt gruesome to look at her. But up jumped the bride again with her "Good day, my aunt," and her too the prince asked to sit down. But he was far from happy, and he thought to himself, "Heavens shield me from that kind of aunts my bride has." So when he had sat a while, he could not keep his thoughts to himself any longer, but asked, "But how in all the world can my bride, who is such a lovely lassie, have such loathsome mishappen aunts?" "I'll soon tell you that," said the first. "I was just as pretty as your bride when I was her age, but the reason why I've got this long nose is that I've always been sitting and poking and nodding over my spinning, and so my nose got stretched and stretched until it got as long as you now see it. And I," said the second, "ever since I was young, I had sat and shoved backwards and forwards at the weaving bench, and that's how my seat has gotten so broad. and big as you see it now. And I, said the third, ever since I was little, I had to sit and stared and sewn and stared night and day, and that's why my eyes got so ugly and red, and now there's no help for them. So, said the prince, I am glad I came to know this, for if folk can get so ugly and loathsome by all this, then my bride shall neither spin nor weave nor sew again all her days. So they worked themselves so hard. They were such pretty young ladies, right? And then sometimes you have to work harder and harder and harder, and your body just breaks down, right? That's absolutely true. So now that they showed the prince how hard they worked and how much it really affected them, the prince is like, oh, not my wife. My wife is going to be taken well care of, right? She's not going to have to do all that extra. And she's going to be having babies probably anyway. She's going to be having babies and raising them and teaching them things. All right, my angel, let's do Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious was that grace thus far, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, snarls, and snares, I have already come. His grace thus far that lead me here, and grace will lead me home when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Karina, baby, Mama loves you. Mama will always love you. I love you, my sweetheart.